So I was thinking about something before we start. Let's take a minute to talk about Talmud learning in general. Talmud is very special because it is the one book, besides for Tanakh, that is Judaism in its entirety. That if someone says a certain rabbi, I don't believe in this rabbi from the 1600s, or I don't believe in the rationalist philosophies of Judaism, I don't believe in the Hasidic philosophies, someone will say that, okay, all right, they don't like it, but they're not denying Judaism, they're doing something different in Judaism. But, and obviously, everybody should make space for every type of philosophy, and it all has value. But if someone denies that, we're not going to say, they're completely off. They're completely off the Jewish path. The Talmud is something different. The Talmud is Judaism. The Talmud, for the entire nation, is Judaism. It's where it is. And you go to any, especially any Orthodox place, doesn't matter where you are on that spectrum. If you quote something from the Talmud, they can't refute you. If you say the Talmud says something, and you show them where, they're lost. They say, I'm sorry. Right? You show them some rabbi they've never heard of, they'll be like, oh, I don't believe in that. So, in one way, it makes it very special. In other ways, it can be tough. Because Talmud might present to us an idea that doesn't strike well with us, that gives us a sort of tension. Like a lot of us have been struggling with the notion that it's not legally obligated in Judaism to return a lost article to a non-Jew. And there's been tension, and that's okay. Because in a shul, in a religious community, we're not just here to make everybody feel good with what they're doing anyway. That's not the only thing. We do things like that. There's Shabbat dinners. There's, we say, whatever's going on, you're here. But there's also the point in religious life, as in any other part of life, working out, and career-wise, where you do have to go through some sort of tension, where you confront something that's different than you, and then you grow from it. So this whole notion that you don't have to return legally something to a non-Jew, we say, okay, but that's only for Jewish court. That's within Torah law that's specifically for Jews, but that doesn't interrupt some other kind of morality. That doesn't interrupt the basic Torah ideal that we're supposed to treat people with respect. But there's something different, that there's something legal here, that Judaism also has a legal system. But you confront ideas that might clash with ours, and then you expand your worldview. So that's part of what we're doing here. And this is, you'll confront an idea, you'll feel like, something's not right here, but then you'll make it make sense. The
question is, how did the Talmud become the authoritative situation?
Right. So it was made before the Jews were completely scattered around the globe. So they set it in stone that this is the Talmud. It used to be, you can continue, there was just the Tanakh and you were just discussing the oral law. But they said, no, we need to put it in stone because it was about the year 400 or 500. It was because Yehuda HaNasi made the Mishnah at around 200, and then it was a couple hundred years later. I don't know the exact date, but so yeah. So it's really.
How many people got together to say this is what we should? This is the law. Talmud. How many people? How many rabbis who did it?
It was the rabbis over 300 years, and then 2 rabbis took all their discussions and redacted them.
I got you.
Yeah. So there might be some things that, as we continue going forward in the Talmud, that you'll want to argue, and that's okay. Argue. Challenge the Talmud. I mean, you can always say that. Okay, like the Talmud says something. Definitely, we follow, but it will help us to expand ourselves and expand our spiritual selves. It's good to come into contact with ideas also that are different than yours, that are different. And that means when there's tension, there's growth. All right.
It's a good thing for KI is attention here.
Tension.
Maybe we'll grow.
Yeah, sometimes we need tension. People sometimes need tension in their lives. They need a little bit. And if not without that, life is boring, isn't it? All right. Okay, so now, we have just started a discussion that if something is worth less than a pruta, which in our sense would be about 8-10 cents, you do not have to return. You do not have to return it if it's something so little. Because again, this is something like, oh, but shouldn't you return it? The answer is that doesn't have legal standing, something that's worth so little. Something that's worth so little doesn't have legal standing.
Something that is of value to me, it may be worth 7 cents, but to me, it's valuable.
So to you, it's valuable, that adds more value to it. But we're talking about something where really it's worth something much less. You're right. Okay, I'm getting to see your point that something, let's say you have a penny that was given to you by your grandfather. And your grandfather gave you this penny, and it's worth something to you. I don't know if that would have a legal standing, because if it's really a penny, if it's a penny that has a signature on it or something, that would probably make it worth more.
Well, let's say, for example, I had a pen, a beautiful pen, okay, and I gave it, and I lost it, and I know it wasn't worth anything, but it was a beautiful pen. It was a piece of metal, but it was worth something to me.
So that would be worth something more. Usually,
so what is the rule on that? If it's worth something to me,
if something is
if
worth,
it's even is worth less than 8 cents,
if it's worth less than that, I'm not sure. That's a good question. As we're going to see as we read the Gemara today, we're going to have to ask ourselves, how is the Talmud judging how much something is worth, which is also an economics question. But I'm not exactly sure if something
one is emotion and one is economics.
One is emotion, one is economics. So it appears at least that the Talmud is just being economical, that there's some kind of gold standard. So I'm not exactly sure, but it would be very hard to value that in court, emotional cost. Like usually when we talk about like say if you're valuing a house, you're appraising a house. The appraiser is not going to, for the market, it's going to gauge how much the house is worth in bricks and mortar.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Right. So as I'm saying, when we're talking about a legal standing, legal court of law, we might not be going by our feelings. We might be going by simply what this is worth in the common market.
You're going back to the premise. Even though we disagree with it, this is the law.
So yeah,
emotion doesn't stand the.
Well,
forget about emotions. If it's not less than 8 cents,
emotions might come into play at other points in the law, but probably not here.
But that's a subjective value, and so you can't really quantify that.
Yeah,
and it's hard. With the law, you have to essentially make objective decisions. So it's real hard to. But practically speaking, too, like if it's not something that's worth a lot of money, and I find it now, if you told me is worth something to you, here, take it, I would give it to you. But like if practically speaking, you find something that's not worth a lot of money, and you know that, you don't know it's worth a lot to another person, you wouldn't know to announce it, to give it back, whatever.
Exactly. So it's a good point. If you find something in the street that in the common market is not worth it, you keep it and you don't really announce it anyway.
You assume
you can't really quantify subjective value. Okay, so we learned this law. To continue, we learned this law about you only have to return a pruta. It could be from one of two parts in the verse. It could be the part in the verse that said that it's by the perspective of the person who lost it, meaning when the person lost it, and we said, oh, he has to have lost something significant. Or when the verse says umatzasa, and when the verse says the words and he found it, then that implies that when you find it, it has to be worth something. So one's going at the time of the losing, one's going at the time of the finding. Now what does that mean? So Rava Amar, Pruta Shehuz Le'ikabenayu. So there's a difference between these two perspectives. Let's say you find a coin that cheapened in value. So you have a dime, and the dime now is not even worth...
devalued.
It's devalued, meaning... You could say that this dime now has become damaged enough that it's no longer a coin. But at the time when it was lost, it was worth a pruta, or something, not necessarily a dime, a little piece of cloth maybe that's worth a dime, but it became devalued. So something that was worth something in the beginning when you lost it, according to the one who said, according to the one who says we go by the losing, it was worth a pruta, it was worth 10 cents at the time when you lost it, so you got to return it. But according to the person you said that it goes by the finding, then at the end of the day you found something that was not worth 10 cents. Correct? So, but ask the Gemara, says, but he says, no. But at the end of the day, if you're a person who lost, if you're saying that I go by, according to the verse, when it said we go by the losing, at the time when you lost, the verse does still say, and he found it. It does need to be worth something when you find it. So just because you learn it from Asher Tovad, from the word losing, you still need, that verse still exists, that you have to go by the finding. So he would say that if you found it and it's not worth anything, then you wouldn't. Then you wouldn't have to return it. So those three lines are basically the opposite. They said, oh, okay, we're talking about a case where you have something that went up in value, that was worth less than 10 cents, but then it went up in value. So then we say, oh, according to the person who said that he found it, then you have to return it because it's worth something now. According to the person who said that, no, we learned it from the guy who said losing, but at the time when you lost it, we go by the time, then it was super cheap. So then the Gemara says, no, it's the same thing. Right, so it's a mitzasa. This person who said it has to be worth something when you find it still has that verse to contend with, and this is lots of Talmud over here contending with verses. We have this verse that says it has to be worth something when you lost it. In other words, you need that. So we're in a bind here. What's the difference? So Ela pruta shehukra v'chuzla evachazra v'hukra eka beinayhu. So we're talking about something that was worth a pruta 10 cents when you lost it, and then it cheapened in value, and then when you found it, it went back up again. Market is fluctuating. So
Hey, come on, baby.
It was a sheriff's stop.
Wait. Hold on. So let's finish this up and then we'll discuss. So according to the person who said Asher Tovad, he said Asher Tovad says, oh, look at that. You lost it was worth a pruta. You found it when it was worth a pruta. We're okay.
That's right.
But the word
in between doesn't matter.
The in-between doesn't matter. But Umatsasa says the in-between would matter because Umatsasa has an extra implication that you should, when you find it, it has to be a mitzia, a real object all the way through. That's the implication they draw from the word Umatsasa.
A real object.
Meaning a real object that's worth something all the way through. So Umatsasa means you find a mitzia, a real mitzia, a lost object. So we say, we're trying to find a difference. We say, this must be the difference. This must be the difference that the person who said Umatsasa has this extra implication. If you say, if you learn it from the word tovad, that it goes by the losing, then you could just say, oh, he lost it, and we still have this implication that when you found it, it's also a 10 cents, so it's fine. But if you say Umatsasa, if you learn it from there, then they must have that extra implication that you need it to be a mitzia, an object, all the way through. It has to be all the way through that it needs to be worth something.
Like of constant value, like an object with some kind of constant value above a pruta. Is it when
Meaning the object, this cup or something had to be worth above a pruta for the whole time. It had to be a real object. If it's worth less than a pruta, it's not even an object.
Right. So if it's, you're right. That's what you just said.
Okay. All right. So, okay. So, I think we can sometimes, yes, the Talmud gets into cases that are.
Wait a minute, Rob. So,
Yeah.
if it was worth less than a pruta when you left, it gained value. Then it lost the value. When it was found, does it need to be returned?
That's the opposite case that we just said.
I know.
Right.
Does it need to be returned?
No.
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 Now, if it's worth, then it lost its value, and then it regained its value. It needs to be returned.
According to the person who learns it from one, person who says that we go asher tova.
Perfect.
According to the other one, he said no, you don't have to return that. Okay.
Sure, go ahead.
All right. So let's just go to do a little bit more. We're going to now discuss something very pivotal. So this was very nitty-gritty. Sometimes the Talmud gets into nitty-gritty. Sometimes when you're discussing law, you get into the nitty-gritties. And also the devil is in the details. This is also godliness, discussing the nitty-gritty details of life. That's also something very special about the Talmud. Talmud says that, sometimes, we get so caught up in huge spiritual ideas, we forget about the details of life, that they're also holy. Listen, this can happen a lot amongst, people who have huge dreams, but, they don't do anything about it. If you have these huge things, but you got to do something. Life involves little nitty-gritty details, so if you learn Talmud a lot, you get an appreciation for the details. Okay, so Ibayalahu. Ibayalahu, bottom line, Simanin dioraisa o derabana. My nafkamina. We're asking a question. The notion of returning lost objects, as we've said, means that you have to have a sign on it. If you want to get it back, you have to have a sign. If you lose this cup, you have to be able to identify it and say, I lost a cup. It was a Darnell red cup. Or I lost a wallet. It was a brown leather alligator wallet with a suede inseam, whatever. And you have to identify it. Now, the notion that you can trust signs, that you can do this, because maybe, the only thing you can really do is you could have to bring a witness. Like a witness is hard ironclad proof. Like the witnesses come and they say, we testify that object, it belongs to this person. That's usually, by the way we do monetary law. The way we do monetary law is, that there are witnesses to transactions. So ask the Gemara, is the notion that with lost objects that you can return it with just identifying marks, is that a Torah law, or is that something the rabbis added on? So what would the difference be? Because you have to return it anyway. Why do we care whether it was Torah law or rabbinic law? Turn the page. La'ahadure get isha b'simani. To return a woman's divorce bill with signs. Meaning, suppose a woman, there was a divorce bill that a man wrote to his wife, and he gave it to a messenger. And the messenger said, and he just gave it to him, and he said, here, I need you to deliver this to my wife. And the messenger lost it, and you found it. And the shaliach says, hey, that's mine, and I need it back. I need to go give it to the woman. Now, you don't mess around with a get, first of all. You want to make sure that with a divorce bill, you're giving it exactly to who it belongs to. So the question is, can you use signs? Can the shliach say, hey, there was little marks on the paper, this was this specific type of paper, it was written on parchment with this type of ink. Can he make identifying marks for you to give it back? What? Names? Names can work. Names, it would have to be probably a unique name, maybe. But also, names can work. But also, with a shliach, the messenger, you never really know if he knows the names. He was just told to give it to the lady. So, Iyamar Dioraisa, if you say that it's Torah law, Mahadrina, signs work. But Iyamar Dirabanan, Ki Avad Rabbanan Takanta B'Mamona, Avo B'Yisura La Avad Rabbanan Takanta. Meaning, we can ask ourselves this question. How can rabbis make any type of decree regarding money? How can they say that according to Torah, sometimes the rabbis will say, according to Torah law, this belongs to this person. But we're going to make a rule that you need something extra, meaning, let's say the Torah said that this money belongs to Martin, but with this burden of proof. But the rabbi said, no, we're going to add on something to the Torah and say you need a stronger version of proof. And the question is, like, wait a minute, that's stealing. How can rabbis say, according to Torah law, this belongs to Martin, and the rabbis say, no, not yet, they need something more. So the answer is that based in the Jewish court, or Jewish court has a special power, which I believe also non-Jewish courts have as well, that they have a power to say whatever that if they declare something ownerless, they can give it to someone, whoever they want. Technically, based in Jewish court does have that power to be able to declare something of yours ownerless and say that we can give it to someone else. Now, they don't use that power to create, we're just making everything ownerless. There's no such thing as, private property anymore. They don't have that power, but this power specifically is for use to make decrees. That if they say we need something, an extra burden of proof in this society, they're allowed to do that. But that's only by money. They can't do that by prohibitions. They can't do that because prohibitions, the issue of divorce, giving back a divorce bill is not a monetary thing. So if signs are only rabbinic, they work only rabbinically. If signs work only rabbinically, then signs don't really work for giving back a divorce bill. Because this divorce bill is an issue not of money, it's an issue of using it for prohibition to free a woman, to institute a divorce. So then they can't do that. They did not do that in cases of prohibition that you could do with signs. But if signs are a deoraita, are something that we learn from Torah, then that's fine, because the Torah said signs are okay. Signs, if you give signs that they're okay. So next week we're going to explore. If we remember from earlier on, the Gemara is going to go through a lot of different cases and say, oh, it's a proof from here. And then the Gemara says, no, it's not a proof on whether the notion of signs are rabbinic or from the Torah. This is a very, very important distinction to keep in mind, especially in modern day Judaism when we're discussing topics that some things are from the Torah, some things are rabbinic.
I thought you said that we made the Talmud, and this was the law.
Yeah.
So now you're saying this is from the Torah or whether it's from rabbinic.
So it is the law, meaning this encompasses all of Jewish law.
Okay.
And in Jewish law, there is a distinction between rabbinic law and Torah law. So the Torah has a mitzvah that we're supposed to listen to rabbinic law. That we're supposed to listen to rabbinic law. That if it happens that rabbis see fit to...
Does that contradict the Talmud?
No, because the rabbinic law was well before the Talmud. They made rabbinic law, and the Talmud compiled everything. They compiled all rabbinic law and Torah. Like, for instance, Hanukkah is rabbinic law. Purim is all rabbinic law. There's no such thing as in the Torah. There's no such thing as Purim. The rabbis came up and said, rabbinic law, we're going to make a new holiday. The notion of Al Natilat Yadayim, which Gabriel is, there's the class on Monday nights. Washing hands, the way we do nowadays, is rabbinic law. It's all rabbinic law. In the Torah, it was Torah law when the Kohanim did their washing of their hands in the Beit HaMikdash, but But the rabbi said, okay, but we want to remember the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, so we're gonna make a law that people must wash their hands before the meal. But that's all rabbinic law. It's not Torah law. So
There are several issues with that, Rabbi, is that the rabbinic law has to follow Torah, cannot go against Torah. Rabbinic rabbis cannot decree that Shabbos is no longer.
yes,
They cannot do that,
no,
right? However, sometimes they get into very difficult issues that could either be considered as adding to the Torah, which is a big no-no, or just making up stuff that sometimes goes against Torah. So sometimes not. I mean, like
yes. This is a huge.
it's a
He's Gabriel's correct on that. The rabbis can't abrogate Torah law. Sometimes the most stark example of this is not blowing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah when the first day is Shabbat. And the rabbis, so they say, how can the rabbis say you shouldn't blow the shofar? Because they're not abrogating Torah law, they're just telling you to not perform a mitzvah. Because there's another value, because they were afraid that people were going to carry the shofar in the streets. So that's always the mysterious one. Whenever Rosh Hashanah is on Shabbos, still people are very even in ultra-Orthodox world, they keep talking about it. Like, this is such a mysterious thing. How can the rabbis, how can we not blow shofar today? So yeah.
But prohibiting women from wearing red velvet in a ultra-Orthodox Haredi community
No.
in the middle of Jerusalem, that becomes their own rabbi's decree, and all kinds of things like that happen in communities that eventually people just like, okay, but where is the Torah says that, all kinds of things, little things that where rabbis just put their...
Yeah, this is a question. I don't believe rabbis have that blanket. That they don't really have that blanket authority nowadays to do things like that. Back then when they made these laws, it was one rabbinic court.
Correct.
For everybody. Nowadays, when if we were to do that something like that would never get passed because, all the communities have a rabbi representing. That being said, if you live in a community like that, there should not be any confusion. There are some people who like it. They say, whatever the rabbi says, middle of Jerusalem, I want to do it. Awesome. But no one should ever be confused that that's something that applies to us. If that's what you want to do in the community, go ahead. So yeah.
People always talk about the spirit of the law, whether that's, you've got to understand, what the Torah is trying to accomplish. You got to understand the higher value, stuff like that, when you're talking about not blowing the shofar.
Yeah.
What's the higher value? What's the thread running behind everything? You got to know more than just memorizing individual laws or whatever. You've got to understand the purpose that is trying to be achieved, and then you have to apply. The Torah gives basic laws, but it does not give its application in all these circumstances, and that's what the courts are for.
Exactly.
And so you have to do that in any country with any system of law, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they're, you can view them as extensions that are applying, to specific circumstances. I'm thinking of kind of tendrils going out, whatever. It's rooted in the same, it's rooted in the same premise, the same law, but it's going out and into all these different areas, all these different situations, and being applied to those. But you have to do that. And like you said, in the Torah, there's the commandment for that to be done, and also for people to obey the decisions that are made.
Well, yeah.
So that's part of Torah, applying that.
So let's, we can bring this back to where we started the discussion, the notion of law. Sometimes that really, upsets people. Law is necessary in society. But you'll have all kinds of conflicts. And without the law, we will basically back to killing each other. And we might not like the law that gets made. And it might not make sense to us. But we do need some system of law. It needs some system of law. So that's what the Torah gives. The Torah gives us a system of law straight given from God to Moshe, everything, and covering, well, all of our dealings with each other. So, beautiful. All right. Have a wonderful day.